Is this my, oh, the microphone is on. Yay. Okay, we're going to go ahead and get started. So those in the back, if you would like to come up front and join us, we would love that. And she's coming. So before I turn it over to Pastor Dan and Karen, the handout that you've received, there is no quiz later. So I want you to know you don't have to read it and absorb it. But what it is, the team put together, and we looked online, but the first 2 pages, front and back, are examples of covenants that other churches who are open and affirming have written for their congregation. We want you to know this is our goal. Our next steps of the team is to write a covenant. So the first one, just to kind of give you a heads up, is from Bloomington, from their church. The next one came from First Congregational here in Indianapolis. The next one, Metanoia, is an online-only church. And then the last one is the IKC covenant, and they passed this 2 years ago. 2 years ago, I was there, Jennifer was there, Pastor, you were there, and Mike Wright was there when we passed this one. So read it. If you've got questions or, you have input, the team would love to know, because I think that's our next step, is to start writing a covenant that represents us, okay? And then the last 2 pages are pages that the team submitted to be shared with you of adaptations that we as a congregation and the world outside of us, how we might interact with others, as well as how do we share the scriptures in that aspect. So these are adaptations, modifications that we might consider, and I have a feeling these 2 will be kind of talking about that as well. And when they get done talking, and I told them briefly, if you do have questions, we'll be happy to give you the microphone and ask. But this is just kind of an open forum to let you know what our next steps are, what we're thinking, what you might consider as we move forward. I've said enough. I'll just go over here. Do you need this mic?
I do. I think I should have this mic. Yeah. Well, I hope you realize that Dan is one of my dearest friends. And so sometimes we don't have to communicate. We already know. So I'm going to ask him a few questions. Some questions you may have heard before. But since this is really Dan's first involvement in the work that the team is doing behind the scenes, this will give you an opportunity to hear Dan's perspective about the complete O&A network work that's is being done and has been done here at Southport, as well as the entire conference. So the first thing I want to ask Dan, in your experience, as a pastoral leader, have you known or maybe even counseled someone or some people who have been wounded by being part of a more fundamentalist congregation? Someone who's been hurt by being in church and now is not in, maybe he's no longer attending church. And so how could this congregation reach out and include them?
Well, the first thing I would say is, probably many of you already know this, is that I am one who was raised in a fundamentalist, at that time, tradition. Fundamentalist means basically that there is a view of Scripture that it is more or less, picture this, that God took the hands of the people who wrote the Scriptures out, and basically God moved their hand, and therefore every single word is perfect. There is no room for what some of us recognize, because we're realists, is human error. And that also everything in there applies no matter the culture in which someone lives. So I was one who was wounded by that tradition because I was brought up to believe that homosexuality, and that particularly that, meant you would what? Go to hell. And it was actually put more profoundly, burn in the pit fires of hell for all eternity. That causes mental and emotional trauma and woundedness for somebody who inside recognizes who they really are, but fears losing the love, the support, that fears losing their very livelihood and call to serve God. That experience, for some reason, while people all those years in ministry did not know about me, they would come to me and share their woundedness from the church. Some who were women who felt that they were called to preach and to teach. And there are many denominations out there, large ones, that even today say a woman has no place in front of the congregation. A woman has no place on a board, on a council, unless it has to do with the children. Okay, we kind of understand the underpinning there. It's because, by and large, the men don't want to do that work. But the reality is that I have experienced women who have completely left the church, who have turned their back because they felt they were not accepted. The opportunity has been that at least one positive of my former tradition was that they did allow women in ministry. And so when you can say that we are a place that will not wound you, but that wants to see you healed, to live out what God has called you to do. I have followed up with families who have dealt with the suicide of a loved one. Usually a child, sometimes a father. And underneath the core, wouldn't one think the church would be the first folk to rally behind? Imagine this. You're sitting in a funeral for someone who has committed suicide, and your fundamentalist pastor gets up and says, "We are here today not to celebrate the passing of so-and-so, but to grieve that they are permanently separated from God and are in hell. Let their lives serve as an example to us that we can never do what they have done." How are you going to feel? I have talked to people who have eventually become members of a church that doesn't teach that. I have also sat in those funerals and heard that. And you know what else you hear? You hear the gasps, and you hear mom or wife or sibling wailing because they have been told their family member or friend is burning in hell. It is not ever any substantiation but in a fundamentalist tradition to judge where someone's eternity will be spent. And that is one of the prevailing importances of being what I call, we call it ONA, I call it safe church. You know, we use safe church labels and stuff where kids can come and be in safety. You remember where in your neighborhoods, maybe at least in mine, there was a label on a window that declared this is a safe space? I like to think of it as this is a safe space where you will not be told you are burning in hell. And if you ever hear that slip out from me, you best come right to me and say, Pastor, you need to correct yourself. Fundamentalism declares absolutes that do not exist in biblical teaching. We talk in this day and age about weaponization of the justice system. There's something worse. It's weaponization using the Bible to beat people down. Do you believe that exists? And do you support that? Then we need people to know we are safe and that will not happen here. Right. Next question.
Right. Well, you've covered a couple that are good. You know, because there must be some things that a congregation can do to make sure that those on the outside the walls who've never been here, who may be struggling to try to return to church because of their woundedness. And so how can this congregation communicate that message that Dan just said was so important about you're not going to be judged, criticized, shunned, misunderstood. You're going to be accepted and you're going to be affirmed. So that's what I think the congregation needs to talk about as a whole with the team. What can we do to make sure people will know this is a safe space where they are free to explore who God's calling them to be? In fact, that's something all of us need to explore from time to time. This is a little bit of a hot button, but I think we need to bring it up.
Oh, yay.
Can you, Dan, speak to the ways which changing the ways we speak about God could influence those who've never heard about God's all-encompassing love, as well as God's desire to bless all people?
Okay.
Careful.
I will be, because I got to speak from my own process of coming through what we call God language. Yes. Okay. You know that question about fundamentalism? When I was in seminary, my nickname was Fundy, because I had presented a paper before my class on the positives of believer baptism by immersion. Okay? And it was in that same experience where that, because I believed in baptism by immersion was a good thing, I was a Fundy. And the person who started calling me Fundy is now one of my career best friends, who actually was a reference for me when I interviewed to come here. So that shows how transition can take place over 40 some odd years. I also, during my seminary experience, there was a movement called 7 Seconds of Silent Protest. We had chapel, and we had guest speakers, and we had professors. And it was this movement's goal that any time a guest speaker, a chaplain, or a professor referenced God as Father, Jesus as Lord, kingdom of God, they stood in 7 seconds of silent protest. Now, I thought that was absolutely horrible and disrespectful to adults. I still have some issues with that, but it forced me to dig down deep into my soul and to come to some terms. When my congregation sang on Father's Day, Faith of Our Fathers, I refused to sing it because you know that I had a bad father image. My dad was not someone faithful. And it pained me. It hurt, and I wasn't going to use that faith of our fathers. But I did the other stuff. Our Father who art in heaven. Apostles' Creed. We believe in God the Father Almighty. And there was another war going on inside of me. And I was at church camp, 8th grade. And it was around the campfire. And I was pulling that, I'm not going to hear this father stuff. Because that's what the lady who was the chapel speaker around the fire was talking about. And I had what Brad calls my resting so-and-so face. And I had that. And I also started to cry. And she came over to me and she said, okay, spill your guts. What's going on? And I said, I can't view God as a father because fathers abandon their children. They cheat and they abandon. She said, I want to introduce you to God the Father, who does not abandon, who does not cheat. I became good, and I started singing Faith of Our Fathers. But here's the issue. To me, it will always be really important because of who I am in faith to speak of God the Father. And I'm never going to apologize for that, but I also recognize that there are people who still have that pain attached. And so space must be made for them by giving a little. We will always, and I mean, as long as I'm here, we'll always pray, Our Father who art in heaven. My first interaction with a progressive UCC church that I was doing a chaplaincy at as a part of getting my privilege of call, I went in on Sunday morning, and it was time for the Lord's Prayer. And the pastor got up there, a guy probably in his 60s. He was interim, gray hair. I expected 60-year-old gray hair stuff. Now, I know not to put labels on people because of the way they look. But he started the Lord's Prayer, Our Father, our Mother, who art in heaven, and my jaw dropped. It was too much for me. It was too much. We need to be sensitive to those issues, but we need to find ways in which we can use language that enables us to do what ONA and the rainbow of the covenant wants us to do. And that's see the so many other names and the so many other identifications of God. Did you know that while I'm not going to pray Our Mother who art in heaven, that there are actual scriptures in the Bible that refer to God's mothering character? And I challenged the, quote, fundies to tell me that that doesn't exist, because I know it does. Good words, creator, sustainer, Almighty One, Holy and Awesome God. Are any of those incorrect names for God? So should we not be able to incorporate them? Scripture was written in a day that used masculine gender for a really big reason. Because women were possessions back then. They had no place. Jesus came to break those barriers, recognizing the woman at the well. We need to break barriers. We need to move from a paternalistic church to a church that sees the many character traits of God and is not ashamed to refer to God using things other than His Father, Lord. Nothing in the Bible is limiting, so why are we?
Yeah. Wow. Thanks, Dan. Okay. Okay. In your opinion or your experience, Dan, would shifting the language potentially create a more open and caring and accommodating congregation? I know you kind of just.
Yeah, undeniably. Shifting in language will make people who weren't brought up the way most of us were feel that they have a space here because we're not telling them how they have to see who God is. It is an open, safe space. And I'll end it with this. We had a theology class that was over the top bizarro, okay? Where we had to look at a chair and write a paper about how God is like a chair. Okay? Now, this challenged me, but I found ways to see that God is one in whose lap I can sit. Broaden the view. You know how a chair has a back? God is one upon whom I can recline and find support. Be creative in our understanding, and it will make people feel comfortable. The question is, how comfortable are we willing to be for others? You said that was the last one, so that's the last one.
Yeah.
Carolyn, where do you want to go from here? Any questions or comments from any of y'all?
Of course.
Back to John. A thumbs up. Oh, okay.
Oh, okay.
Questions, comments?
Fears?
I missed the big. I always struggle with this. I missed the beginning, but when we were at St. Peter's this past weekend, there were these cool cards in front of each seat. And if anyone would like to take a look at them, they not only tell visitors what to expect during their worship and some of the things they offer, but the other side had their covenant of welcome and their mission and vision on it. And I thought it was just a really cool way to show people who you are when they sit down the first time in your church. So if anyone wants to look at those, I will have them, or maybe I could leave them in the back of the church.
Well, they could be copied.
Either way.
I have a question. I guess we're talking about worship. How are we seeing that this is going to change our worship? I mean, I'm confused on why this has become such a meeting after meeting.
It wouldn't. It may just be that, like this morning, we sang a really beautiful doxology, learning new things to sing. And you noticed the two choruses that we've been singing, we would consider them very open and affirming. Lord, you are more precious than silver. Lord, you are more costly than gold. Lord, you are more beautiful than nothing I desire compares to you. That's seeing God in different ways.
Exactly.
So, does it change anything?
Well, that's what I'm guessing.
The change is that it might make people who come in with baggage that we don't have to feel this is a cool place to be.
So what kind of terminology are we going to end up using? Because I want to see us more than LGBT.
Oh, yeah. And I want to make clear.
Because that seems to be the focus of O&A, and that's
here's
not
a
my
problem
focus.
that I see. We have one church in our city that is UCC. They became O&A at the very get-go. The issue that I see with them is that their sole focus is on LGBTQ. That is unhealthy. The focus needs maybe just launch from that, but the focus is on everybody marginalized and ostracized because of race, creed, color, not just orientation, disability, inability, whatever. That's why I talked about, for me, instead of the rainbow, I like the recliner chair.
I love it.
And I'm telling you, Lou, there may come a stage where not because you have HIV, but because you could use a recliner chair in here.
Right. I mean, I guess I want to
Yeah.
know what our committee, or what our, as a church, what we're going to do to show the public that we're more than that.
Exactly.
What are we going to do to show? And I guess that's my question to the group.
Well, guess what? We have already started.
Okay.
This is how we started. We gave space to save the park. Okay?
Okay.
We had grandparents raising grandchildren. We have April's closet. So while people may not associate those things with an ONA covenant, we are already doing that. It gives us an opportunity to not put somebody asked me earlier, like, do you and Brad, like, wave the rainbow flag and put it out? And I'm like, no. No, because when I was married to Brag's wife, there was no heterosexual flags that were out there. You know? It's just who we are, but let's see that people know that they are welcome here.
So are we going to update our website? Because it's outdated.
Our website, for more than just that, Scott,
Because
did a lot.
we need to show the other things that we do.
Totally.
We're going to be open and affirming, and the open and affirming is going to be out there on our website. We need to update everything.
Yes. And did you notice that in the covenant that I wrote, I did not mention anything about covenanting about sexual orientation. It didn't come out in that. It came about other aspects of human life. And we definitely, Lou, I will not be happy if this church adopts an ONA covenant that then becomes like that other church in this association that only focuses on that.
Right.
Because when you only focus on that, guess what? You're limiting. You are limiting. Thank you. That's a valid question.
And we talk about that in our O&A task group. Yeah. We talk about that a lot.
Other questions?
Thank you very much, and thanks
Oh,
for
Mike
staying.
had a hand up. Mike?
Okay, if we're going to be open and affirming, you mentioned several times the fact that we would be trying to be friendlier to the people who are disabled. Well, gee, where are our disabled chairs? Our benches? They're clear at the back. So if you're disabled, you've got to sit back there. That shouldn't be, and that should be something we should change. We need to bring them up front.
Be mindful of all of those. By the way, I'm going to say this in my closing. I don't think you have any more questions, but I really believe this. You have crossed the biggest hurdle of already being open and affirming. Art said something once at a first council meeting. It ticked me off, Art. No surprise. No surprise. He said, "Why do we need to look at ONA? We've got you." Well, I understand that now more. That was our beginning. And those who have not come to terms with that, they are finding their experience elsewhere. And celebrate that hopefully they find a place where God is speaking to them. And you have done a really good job of working through the grieving over that. And so that big hurdle, you already did. Now we're expanding this. And I really don't want to answer more questions because I got to be back here in an hour and 12 minutes to do 3 hours of taping with our small batch media guy.
However, if you do have questions, as you go home, and just make contact with one of the team folk, Carolyn, Jennifer, Carol. Yeah, so they're there, and they have been studying and reading and gaining more understanding. You can trust them.